Some of Batman's villains have one bad day. Some live a long life that end in a horrible tragedy. Today I'm going to be talking about Batman One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze. Like and subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary, and let's roll that intro. Batman One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze is written by Gerry Duggan and illustrated by Mateo Scalera. Now, Batman One Bad Day, I enjoyed it. There are many things about this comic that struck out to me that put a smile on my face, and it was a very fun, short read. But there are many different issues that I had with this comic, like Mr. Freeze's outfit. And the problem I had with Mr. Freeze's outfit was more or less the fact that it was basically a spitting image of the animated series suit. And don't get me wrong, I love that suit. It's classic. We all know it. We all love it. But for this comic, I would have liked something more original, which they do something more original towards the end, but I'll get toward the end. But in the beginning of the comic, it's just a mirrored image of Mr. Freeze's suit from the animated series. And I'm not a fan. As much as I love that suit, I just don't feel like it necessarily worked in this comic. It still looks very cartoonish. Speaking in the sense that this is in a Batman universe, it looks very cartoonish. You know, it looks very simple. There's not too many mechanical stuff going into it, I guess. It just looks very Batman the animated series verse. While Batman and Robin in this comic, their suits are very, I'd say very detailed. Not really new, although I love Batman's suit in this, and I will go into that later. But they could have done something a little different with his first original suit in this, in the beginning of the comic. And not only that, but I don't like the way he talks in this. It's again a spitting image of Mr. Freeze from the animated series. I do like the idea that he speaks very intellectual and very like elegant and stern. You know, very Lex Luthor-y, shall I say. But the only time that I can think of us seeing or hearing Mr. Freeze sound very elegant, very deep, and scary is in the animated series. You know, he's fluent. You know, it speaks to the heart. But if we go back to, you know, this is the '60s Batman, of course, and they were all goofy in that. But even in that, you know, he was a little goofy. He had a character, but he still was intelligent, elegant. He spoke fluently, which they could have done here, even though he, of course, had a tragedy his whole life. Something cool about this Mr. Freeze, though, is it's Gotham. It's pretty dang cold out. And it's Christmas, so it's really, really cold out. Mr. Freeze is just walking around without his helmet. You know, which is a very, very cool detail that they added. It must be very nice for Mr. Freeze to do. It probably gets very crammed in that helmet and very humid in that helmet. Well, I guess not too humid, but very crammed in that helmet. But he's surviving without the helmet on, and I thought that was a very cool detail. Now, in this comic, it is a very big backstory for Nora and Victor. You know, it's their story, and they attack it very well. And we all know the classic Mr. Freeze and Nora story. You know, Nora gets very ill, which causes Mr. Freeze to use his big brain to basically encapsulate Nora in this liquid nitrogen frozen substance, saving her from death, but making her unconscious, surviving in a coma her whole life, which, you know, you guys will be the judge on if that's right or not. But it's not, in my opinion, it's not too right. But that that's kind of the main focus. And we start to find out that, of course, Victor isn't the greatest husband in the world at all. He's kind of a narcissist, shall I say. He's very manipulative and controlling. That's kind of his character in this. And Nora's a very outgoing girl. She loves going out with her friends. She loves being out in the world, and Mr. Freeze, of course, is encapsulated, and I use that word again, encapsulated in his work. He is very enclosed in it. He's very focused in his work. It's his life besides, so he says, Nora, So he most of the time likes to focus on that instead of Nora, which of course affects him because he spent a lot of his time focusing on science while his wife was getting very, very sick, very ill. So he was wasting away that time of letting her have the fun she needed to have before she, passed on, which gives us this, we have sympathy for Victor, of course, kind of at the start of the comic, because we don't know too much about how manipulative and controlling Victor is at the very, very beginning. So we get this sense of sympathy for Victor, which we all do, which we start to lose once we start finding out how bad of a boyfriend or husband Victor really is. And, this whole event, as I said in the beginning, some of Batman villains have one bad day, some live a long life that end in a tragedy. And in this case, Victor had lived a long tragedy, and that is his wife, which broke him. It turned him into the supervillain that he is now, and that's Victor Freeze. That's Mr. Freeze, And in this, we have Batman and Robin, and of course, it's a Batman and Robin comic, but Batman and Robin, they're doing their normal patrol, and the inevitable goal at the end of this patrol is decided by Robin and kind of Alfred, and it kind of makes Batman like snap into it, and the goal is to help one of Batman's villains and just try and fix them, change them, as they keep saying. They want to change a villain to see if they're worthy of changing. And Batman is very hesitant at the start. But Robin, Dick Grayson, of course, he is very, very adamant at getting these villains, like trying to figure out if they can correct these villains in a nice way without, cracking skulls. So Batman decides, of course, he knows one man that has a very good chance of change, and that is Mr. Freeze, which Batman, of course, gets a change of heart. It's Christmas, so he sought out to find, Robin and him sought out to find Mr. Freeze. And they find Mr. Freeze trying to break into an armored truck full of liquid nitrogen. Now, of course, they get stopped. And a little side note, a little funny thing that I always love, and it's just the GCPD's conflict with Batman at all times, how there's always one cop who's like, that's the Batman, let's go. And then there's another cop who's like, no, he's a villain. He does as much crime as all these other criminals he takes down. Don't trust him, And these two guards in this armored truck are one of them's attacking Batman and the other is just praising Batman. But inevitably, yeah, Batman and Robin do stop Mr. Freeze from breaking into the armored truck, but they get into an all-out fight, which creates a conversation because Robin kind of snaps at Mr. Freeze and tells him, hey, we're trying to help you here. We're trying to give you a chance. We're trying to give you some change in your life. We know what you've been through. We want to help you. And Mr. Freeze inevitably was like, all right, yeah, no, I can see where we're going with this. So he goes along with it. Now, the goal of this is to save Nora, I believe, which, you know, is always the story of Mr. Freeze of how he wants to save Nora. So they are trying to get Mr. Freeze to put his big brain to work, and that is to save his wife. Now, what they do is they get Mr. Freeze to work at, I believe it was a LexCorp building that was abandoned, or rented by Batman. But that is where Mr. Freeze will work to try and fix Nora. Now, Nora is not at this facility. Nora is actually in a frozen, broken down boat that's in the middle of the water, the Gotham frozen lake, you know. It's broken down, it's frozen. It's a very cool setting. I actually kind of enjoyed it. But so that's kind of where Nora is stuck at. And while Mr. Freeze is at LexCorp, he of course is struggling to find ways to save his wife. And during this, I would say, montage of Batman doing separate crimes. I mean, in this, he's dressed as Santa Claus. You know, that's one thing I did like about this Batman is they kind of kept a goofier aspect to Batman. Like I said, for Mr. Freeze, they took, you know, the animated series likeness, you know, for him in this comic. And they kind of do that with Batman and Robin in this. I necessarily, as I said, didn't like it too much with Mr. Freeze, but I kind of like it a lot with Batman and Robin. I like a little bit of a not a childish, but a Batman who's willing to crack jokes or look a little goofy to make kids not think he's a horrible man, you know. And that's why I love the yellow Batman emblem. He created that emblem because he was, you know, kids were scared of him. Kids were terrified of the Batman, you know. So he created this big yellow emblem to like grab the kids' attention, to say, hey, I have color, you know, like, that sounds bad. I have this yellow emblem, so don't be afraid of me, you know. And he wears this in here, and that's why I really like his suit. But during this whole, sorry for the side rant, during this whole montage, we are reading I believe Nora's last will. It's her last letter that she wrote to Victor before almost passing, before going into a frozen coma. And in this, she explains how Victor is the one hurting her. You know, he's the one causing this pain because he strips her away from happiness. He strips her away from her friends. He strips her away from just being able to go outside and just be human, you know. He's very controlling, and she attacks that, and she attacks his anger and how he just snaps whenever something goes wrong, but how he's so smart, and she just wants to see him succeed, you know. But it's very tough to see him succeed if he's going to keep going down this dark path. And this, you can tell this letter sticks with Victor throughout his whole life. You know, you could tell he's probably read this letter more times than we can even count, you know. So honestly, in my opinion, maybe this letter is what broke him, you know. It's a very harsh, not harsh, but very harsh and sentimental. I would say, yeah, harsh and sentimental letter to him that's enough to break a man, you know. But inevitably, of course, Victor he does fail. He doesn't really accomplish his goal, so he goes into a heaping rampage and blows up the facility, you know, which isn't a problem for Batman. He's Bruce Wayne. I mean, he's got money. He's LexCorp. Lex Luthor probably could give zero craps, you know. So this place is gone. Like it's gone. And in this scene, now we get to see, as I mentioned at the beginning, now we get to see Mr. Freeze with a new suit, and this suit looks pretty bad. This is pretty cool. It's a blacked out suit, you know, with of course like frozen I would say liquid nitrogen running through the suit. But it looks really, really cool. And in this, on this suit, he also doesn't wear a helmet, of course, because it's like negative 100 out. So he doesn't have to, which I think is always a really cool detail to have. Not only does Mr. Freeze get a new suit in the scene, though, we also get a new bat suit. And it's a fight. I believe it's called a sun suit, but it is redonkulous. I don't like it. I'm not a huge fan of armored Batman suits. I never really was. Even though, I mean, the armored Batman suit in Batman versus Superman, I thought looked a little redonkulous. It looks a little clunky. I always thought Batman looks clunky when he wears these types of suits, and I just feel like it doesn't really work. But not only that, but the orange. Yeah, I mean, Batman's suit in this, or the fire suit is a blackout suit, and it has like orange tubes running all throughout it in orange, like an orange emblem, bright orange, and a cape made of fire, which sounds cool in theory. Sounds really cool, but I don't even know how it's practical, you know? I mean, I guess we have a guy shooting ice out of a gun, but still, it not my favorite suit. I mean, he's got like scuba gear on his face, you know? It's probably not scuba gear, but it looks like scuba gear on the bat mask. Not my favorite suit. But once we get both of the new suits revealed, we get the final boss fight, I will say. And in this fight, it's a very I guess a very heartbreaking fight. They really tear down Victor through words. They break him through words. You know, Batman at one point when they're clashing together, Batman says, "Seems that Nora's worst day wasn't her diagnosis, it was marrying you." You know, Batman went a little harsh with that one. You know, he really attacked Victor. I feel kind of bad. But, you know, he was a horrible guy. He wasn't a great husband. So I guess you can't blame Batman. But they instead of kind of beating him down physically, they beat him down mentally through words, of course, and calling him kind of who he really was during like the marriage. But the crazy thing about it all is we learn that Mr. Freeze doesn't even actually want to set Nora free. You know, I guess I mean, at one point he starts calling her like Naggy, and I'm pretty sure, you know, yeah. So he says, "We don't fight anymore. She's not out spending my money, and I don't sit alone in an empty house wondering who she's out with or when she'll be home all the time." So, which gives us the sense that Victor just kind of liked being in control, I guess, of a relationship. You know, maybe he didn't love maybe he loved Nora, but he didn't love Nora as much as he thought he was. He just liked that feeling of control and that feeling of manipulation. And he just cannot let her go. You know, he still wants her. So that's why he keeps her frozen. That's why he keeps her frozen. You know, he doesn't let her go for the reason that he doesn't want to deal with the consequences of being in a marriage, but he also is still in love, so he can't let her go, you know? So it's very emotional and heartbreaking scene towards the end. And I got to give a lot of credit to Robin, actually, in this comic in general. You know, Batman is, of course, he's the brute in this. You know, he beats the crap out of guys. You know, it's Batman. But Robin, being this kid, I mean, he gave like adult relationship advice to a grown man as a 12-year-old kid. You know, he broke down Mr. Freeze like a man. You know, like Robin is such a strong character in the comics, and I feel like he's really underrated, and he gets bashed a lot, you know, and I guess you can't blame people. They kind of did something a little funny with his suit a lot of the times, but he's a very strong character, you know? And not only as Robin, but when he turns into Nightwing, or if we're talking about Jason Todd, you got to think he turns into Red Hood, you know, and Red Hood is one of the strongest vigilantes in Gotham at that point, you know? I mean, he's taking down the Batman, and then we got Red Robin. We got that guy, you know? So Robin's just such a very strong character, and I feel like he carried him and Batman in this comic, you know? In fact, he shows he's the heart. He shows he is the one who has the most empathy for these villains, who thinks they can change, you know? I mean, it's not like he's the one who said, we could change Mr. Freeze. He said, we can change your villains. You know, he doesn't think we can change only one. We can change one here and there. He wants to change them all, you know? And as for Batman did say, you know, I think I know one that we can probably change, you know, but the rest can't. Robin believes that there is change. That's why he's the boy wonder, and that's why I love Robin. So at the beginning of the comic, we get normal Victor, before Frozone, or before he was frozen, like embracing a red butterfly enclosed in a glass dome, and Nora just gets home and she is wearing a red blouse. Now, the next time we see butterflies is Nora in a blouse again, enclosed in the capsule, and she's enclosed in a capsule, but she is wearing a bunch of red butterflies, and this is where he becomes Mr. Freeze. This is where he transforms into Mr. Freeze. This is where the tragedy happens, or like the climax of this tragedy. But now at the end of the comic, there is a panel of Mr. Freeze, again, before the tragedy, releasing a butterfly into the air that was enclosed. And this butterfly is now blue. Now, what this could mean is that after Nora now being gone, the red butterfly, and always being enclosed, now that she's gone, Victor releasing the blue butterfly resembles him, I guess, escaping and leaving, as he says, as Nora says, leave this trouble behind and spread your wings. And that is what the butterfly is doing, you know, and that is what he's letting this butterfly do. Now, at the end of the comic too, we get Victor making a snow angel. And the context of that is at the end of the comic, after they beat Victor, after Robin, you know, as I mentioned, is kind of the savior of this comic, gives Victor a good old talking to about marriage. Victor is now broken again for the 100th time, because it was a very impactful thing for Victor. You know, Victor knows that this is just a kid. He even says that. You know, he calls Robin a kid all the time throughout this comic. Yet Robin is the one who gets into his heart because of what he says, because of just his words. You know, Robin could bash this guy's head in as much as he wants, but at the end of the day, Robin didn't do that. He still believed in change. So he gave Mr. Freeze a talk. He didn't give him, I mean, he still gave him a bit of a beating, but he gave him a talk. You know, and maybe that's just what Mr. Freeze needed. Now, after this talk, Mr. Freeze is, of course, defeated, and he's being hauled off into, I'm pretty sure he was on a gurney. I'm assuming he took a pretty decent beating by Batman and Robin. But Mr. Freeze calls over Robin to the gurney, and Robin goes over to the gurney, and Mr. Freeze whispers something in his ear that he doesn't tell anybody else. He only tells Robin this one secret. And what the secret is how to transport vaccines safely and without getting them, I'm assuming, messed up without them going bad, you know, just the most efficient way to transport a vaccine. Which I'm assuming is a very hard task to figure out. And Victor telling Robin this information gave Robin the incentive to spread this to the world, which he does, which Mr. Freeze hears about and knows that he accomplished this goal that Nora always wanted him to do, and that was to use his brain for good, which Mr. Freeze has finally done. He finally did something good for the world, using what he's best at and saving people's lives now. Doing something he's never been good at, and that's saving people's lives. And then Mr. Freeze, happy as ever because he knows he fulfilled Nora's wish. He knows he gave Nora what she wanted, and that was to use his brain for good, is happy and makes a snow angel, releasing and spreading his wings like Nora tells him to do. Now, this comic was very fun. I will admit I was a little harsh on it at the beginning, but talking about it, you know, thoroughly going into detail, it is a very detailed comic. There's so much in this comic that I guess I just didn't think about until we started talking about it, and it now is getting to me, and it was a very good comic. You know, it was a very short and very fun read, and it's a very sentimental and heartfelt read too. Now, I'm gonna say this really quick. I'm just gonna run through this. I love the art of this comic. The comic book cover was awesome because it grasped me right away, and that's the reason this was the first one I read, because I really like the cover of this one. The art style is fantastic. But next week, Brennan will be reviewing Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum. So stay tuned for that. And I will be doing a review of Flight by Denzel Washington. It's a very fun movie. Well, I don't know about fun. It's a very exciting movie. But we will see you guys on the next one.